Hey, welcome back to the channel. My name is Stacked and Grounded, the world's best pocket watcher. Today we're going to be pocket watching back in time. This here will be a more educational before you sleep type of video. Today we're going to be walking through some of the wealthiest individuals throughout history, who they were, how they built their wealth, and what their fortunes might look like today, adjusted for inflation. And now I do want to give a important note to you guys before I start. These numbers are estimates. This is not exact. The nature of wealth in ancient empires is different from modern stock holdings. For example, this is a lot of ancient emperors who are controlling land, taxes, tribute, and state resources. I won't go in a strict order in regards to their wealth, but I'll start with the earliest and move forward. Let's get into it. Next, we're going to talk about Augustus Caesar. He was around from 63 BC all the way to 1480. He was the first emperor of Rome. His wealth was partly personal, but partly due to the fact that he was controlling imperial holdings. In some modern estimates, his personal wealth was approximated in the trillions. Just a quick estimate, but around $4.6 trillion in modern comparison. That is reflecting control over large parts of the Roman economy. He had direct control over Egypt, a huge agricultural engine, collected taxes, controlled land, and benefited from the loot in his tribute. His wealth was tied directly to the state power rather than purely capitalist business. Interesting note about him, Roman emperors often merged state wealth with personal wealth. Their status and military conquest directly affected their fortune. Next, we're going to talk about the queen, man. What up, bad bitch that came from Sri Lanka? Nah, I'm just playing. But we're going to be talking about the Empress Wu Zetian. She was around from 624 to 705. She was one of the few female rulers in Chinese history. She ruled during the Tang Dynasty and later as empress in her own name. Some popular sources estimate that her wealth was in the $16 trillion range. She controlled a large share of the Chinese state with taxing, trade, land, and had influence over silk, tea, and tribute systems. An interesting note about her, Wu Zetian, she is often described as a ruthless, politically cunning person. She consolidated many of the powers normally reserved for male rulers and built a powerful intelligence network. So when we talk about a femme fatale, Miss Zetian better be in the conversation, at least. Next, we're going to be talking about Emperor Zhenzong of the Song Dynasty in China. He was around in 1048 through 1085. His reign presided over a booming economy, technological innovation, efficient tax systems, early forms of paper money, and banking. Some sources place his empire's wealth in the $30 trillion range in modern equivalents. Just so y'all get a perspective of how successful his dynasty was in China, China's GDP was the largest in the world at around 30 to 40% of the world's economy. And Shenzong's government pursued reforms, led by officials like Wang Anshi, to increase state revenue, invest in public infrastructure, and strengthen civil service. Much of his wealth though came via governance and imperial control. Interesting fact about him, the Song Dynasty was one of the most economically advanced in this time, with urbanization, printing, and strong trade. Let us start with Genghis Khan. He was around from 1162 all the way to 1227. Now, I'm sure y'all heard of Genghis Khan. They even got a grill named after this man, and that food is bomb. But he founded the Mongol Empire, which at its height stretched from Eastern Asia all the way into Eastern Europe. His empire controlled vast land, trade routes, tribute, and resources. Some modern estimates place his empire's value at $120 trillion. That is not his personal liquid assets, but the scale of control over the territory and the resources he had. How did he build that though? That was through absorbing territories, imposing taxes, trade, tribute systems, and of course the spoils of his conquest.
I am so lonely.
And the Mongols also controlled the Silk Road and many commercial routes. They extracted wealth by controlling movement and security across Eurasia. An interesting fact about him, genetic studies suggest that 16 million men today might carry his Y chromosome line. And that's just a testament to how pervasive his legacy was. So if you're walking around and you meet an Asian dude who got motion for real, most likely that's probably why. Then we have Mansa Musa. He was around during 1280 to 1337. He was often called the richest person in history. He ruled the Mali Empire with control over gold mines, salt trade, taxes, and tribute. His wealth was so legendary that when he made a pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, he distributed so much gold that it reportedly caused inflation in parts of Egypt for years. Modern estimates, and of course this is all very speculative, place his wealth around $400 billion, or even higher in modern terms. His empire's wealth came from gold, salt, trans-Saharan trade, controlling trade routes between West Africa and North Africa, taxation, and agricultural surplus. An interesting fact about him: his lavish spending and generosity, like building mosques, schools, gifting gold, made him a legend in both African and Islamic historical narratives. That's pretty cool. Now we're gonna go into the Mughal era with Akbar the Great. He was around through 1542 to 1605. Or Akbar the First. He ruled much of India and expanded the empire's boundaries, centralized administration, and collected taxes across enormous fertile lands. Some speculative estimates place his wealth in the 21+ trillion range. Akbar also implemented revenue reforms, trade expansion, and patronized arts and culture, which further consolidated his control over economic resources. Y'all can say whatever y'all want about Akbar, but what you can't say is that he didn't have no aura. Look at that hat, man. Got diamonds on it, just dancing. A interesting fact about Akbar: he is remembered for his attempts at religious tolerance, and also incorporating regional rulers into his administration, which helped stabilize the empire and maintain revenue. Alright, then fast forwarding to more recent history, then there's Andrew Carnegie. He was alive during 1835 to 1919, a classic rags to riches story. He immigrated from Scotland and worked in telegraphy and railroads. Then he invested aggressively in steel and vertically integrated his empire. He sold his steel business to JP Morgan in 1901. He sold that for $480 million. Now, I'm not sure what all he spent his money on, but adjusted estimates place his peak net worth today around $310 billion and $372 billion. Carnegie was also legendary for philanthropy as well. He gave away over 90% of his fortune, $350 million in his time, which would be billions today, to libraries, education, and institutions. An interesting fact about Carnegie: he coined and popularized the idea of the gospel of wealth, that rich people should use their wealth to benefit society. I can stand behind that, Andrew. Last, we're going to talk about John D. Rockefeller. He was around through 1839 to 1937. He built his wealth through the oil industry. He founded Standard Oil in 1870, acquiring competitors, controlling and refining his distribution. At his peak, his estimated wealth is placed in the hundreds of billions range. To get an exact amount, I did a quick Google search for it as well, and this is from the source hbs.edu. It says that he was estimated to have around $1.4 billion. They also said that his wealth was equivalent to 1.5% of the US GDP. That's a lot of money. Rockefeller gave away large sums of his money later in life, but still kept enormous influence over American business and philanthropy. Interesting note about Rockefeller: like I previously stated, Rockefeller's wealth was so big that at one point his fortune was said to represent about 1.5 to 2% of the US GDP. He also heavily influenced early philanthropic efforts in education, medicine, and universities. Now, obviously, measuring ancient imperial wealth versus modern assets is apples to oranges. For emperors and rulers, much of what they own was land, tribute, people, and resources. For modern billionaires, wealth is tied to stocks, holdings, and capital markets. But what we see from all of this is the power, control, and resource extraction have often produced wealth bigger than anything we've seen today. And today's billionaires like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Bill Gates don't sit at those speculative levels of the empire control, but they do dominate industries and capital. So no, they cannot money spread like Mansa Musa. Anyways, if you enjoyed this trip through history, please leave a like and comment below if you want some more content like this, because this is different from what I usually do. And please subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you all for listening. This is Stacked and Grounded. Let's build, y'all.